Hi, guys. Welcome back to Being Heard. Today, I have with me Samantha Zito. Um, this is a really beautiful woman that I used to go to high school with, and we weren't friends and didn't really know each other. But I've recently found her online and reached out to her and to have her share her story. So, Samantha, you shared your story on my Instagram not too long ago. Would you like to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the conversation just kind of started with I think we use the word popularity or something along those lines, which I always thought was funny because I've never felt that way in my life.
Mm,
Um, I've never felt like I connected to that word. And so I started really thinking about perception and how the way I might have acted or the people I surrounded myself with kind of formed this perception of who I was. And I was quite crazy in high school, very loud, much louder than I am now. Kind of said whatever, and I thought it was very powerful to be completely unfiltered and free and not listen to anybody. And then as I grew up and matured, I realized that can also be hurtful
mm,
in a way.
mm.
And so, yeah, my identity in high school was very complicated because I had my friend group at school who I kind of had certain relationships with partying and all of that stuff. And then I also had a whole other friend group in a different city. And those kids were like my soulmate friends, we're the ones on the weekend who would get in trouble and always be up to something, and then the weekend would end and I'd kind of go back to this identity.
Right.
So it was confusing being that young, and a lot of my friends at one point weren't allowed to see me because of my other friends I've made, because maybe they seemed a little sketchy, because our high school was super predominantly white,
Yes. Yeah,
super straight edge,
very much so.
very proper, athletes
Mm.
were like the stars. It was typical, like a movie almost.
It was like a movie. I'll never forget one of the first like days that I was introduced to Wesleyan. I was in the girls' bathroom and I was in a stall and I just hear girls rushing in, just like screaming their heads off, like ah! I was like, oh gosh. So I stayed in the stall because I just did not want to be a part of that. And I waited till they left and I came out and someone had just gotten lipstick and just like drawn all over the mirror. I can't remember whose name it was, but someone had wrote something about some other girl and I was just like, wow, where am I?
Yeah, it might have been my name because I've had that happen. I just remember it said something and so and Samantha are the C word.
Mm.
And I just looked at it. There was boys in the girls' bathroom looking at it, taking pictures, and I just felt like there has to be more to life. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. Whoever's doing this, but it just consumed everyone in the moment.
Yeah, and I think as as teenagers, that is our world. So it is all and consuming. It's we get really swept up in the now of high school and our identities, who we are there, who we are to people. We view ourselves in the perception of other people's perceptions. So it's almost like we're so obsessed with who we are and our identity, but we're so worried about other people's perception of us that we only think of what they're thinking about us. Therefore, what we think about ourselves almost becomes non existent in those times. So you
Mhm.
lose a part of yourself. And I feel like that would have been really hard for you with this label of popular in high school because it was quite a label to hold, especially in a predominantly white, high class high school, that was really revolved around cheerleading and sports and like all of that really prestige sort of label that you would get in high school, right?
Mhm. And I really just craved more. So, like I said, I would walk maybe a mile to the bus and go to Portland by myself. I would go to Hillsborough and Beaverton, which have more of a culture there. You see different faces, you see tattoos, you see piercings, people expressing themselves in a way that we never saw.
Mm,
And then for me doing that, I started getting labeled, oh, she's by the parents at least, because I didn't think the kids didn't pay attention to what was going on
yeah.
only in the moment. Parents like, oh, she's being sketchy. And I really, at that age, I was connected to myself enough to know that I really craved more. And I was honestly just bored with the people because I didn't want to talk about, designer brands and, how you just got a brand new Porsche. I wanted to talk about real stuff that matters with real people who've been through things.
Mm. And you went and you sought that out in, other places that you at such a young age saw had some sort of culture that was different to the one that you were in. And that's pretty big for a young woman or just a young teenager in general to kind of have that, bird's eye view of this is my life that I'm living right now, but this is kind of what I want more of or I want to indulge in or educate myself with.
Mhm.
um I guess what was that driving factor in you that you felt like you needed more? Like where did that come from?
I just felt I mean, I have a few friends who still stand strong from high school, don't get me wrong, who
Mm,
I'm are still my best friends, but day to day I just wasn't connecting
mm,
and everyone thought I was,
yeah.
you know, teachers, parents, kids, and I just wasn't connecting and it got to the point where I took it the complete other way. I mean, my boyfriend at age 14 was calling me from his jail phone and
No.
I loved it. I was like I was loving it. I liked, the adrenaline of the unknown
Mm,
and just the faster life closer to the city. I mean, it just felt fun and free and no one would judge me. I remember I ran away from home to see the jail phone boyfriend
you're
and I had a t-shirt I got from a garage sale that said, "I'm so gay I shit rainbows" or something. And then I had combat boots and underwear on and I wore that for 3 days and went and partied with all my friends. And that's just not something we would do in Westland. I mean, you just would never see that.
no, no,
No.
not at all.
No.
And how did that feel for you? Because that sounds like that was quite the shift of identity. It's almost like you stepped into a different person because, like you said, that's not something you would wear or do in that sort of environment in Westland.
Yeah, it felt really good and it felt free, but then I also felt like, okay, I'm going back to my cage with
Mm,
all these people who just don't understand me. And I mean, I there was times when I was not very nice um to people because I was frustrated, but I was always nice to people that I noticed kind of felt like outsiders maybe. I always really connected to them and showed them all my love and care. And then, other groups who I knew were fine and they were athletes and all these friends. I mean, I would start problems with them
mm,
for no reason, just out of pure frustration.
Yeah, I mean, as a young teenager, it's really confusing, that like journey of, self-identity. So to be kind of sitting where you were sitting in this like crossroads of two worlds, like there would be a lot of frustration and confusion inside you, because all you're wanting to do is have people see you, right? Like see all of you for who you are, but also there's that limiting belief or fear that if they were to see you, possibly, you wouldn't live that lifestyle that you get to live as well. So it's like, for a teenager, that's a really big thing. And when we hold things in and we suppress them, we often project them out, right? So like, oh, that's probably what you would have found that you were doing to those, close friends or those people in certain groups. You were so frustrated and confused. All of this stuff was probably just projecting out, and you probably weren't even really aware of it fully at that age as well. It's only probably now that you can kind of see it for what it was as
Mhm.
well. And I find it really interesting that you paid attention to people that you kind of felt were more on the outside of the picture when it came to West Lynn, because I
Mhm.
think that's just a really clear representation of what you were feeling, right? You kind of felt like this outsider that was inside. So
Mhm.
for you to connect with those outsiders, it was almost like you were trying to connect with yourself, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's really like pivotal information for people that are kind of going through the same thing. High school's a really like tough, trying time for a lot of people. And I think one of the main reasons like I reached out to you was because I always was thinking about the outsiders, of high school. Like my thought pattern was like, oh, we gotta fight for those people, right? We've got to hear those people's stories. But actually, in reality, it's really important to see the whole picture and hear the other person's side as well, because you know, being an outsider might have been hard, but also being an insider is probably just as hard, because there's so much to uphold and so much weight on your shoulders as a young female.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even with teachers, at outdoor school, for example, my entire friend group was called in and they threatened us that we would all be kicked out of outdoor school. And they went through all of our personal belongings, just assuming one of us snuck something bad in. And I was
Mm,
just sitting there like, this is not fair. I mean, what is this even stemming from? I'm not a part of this. I'm literally digging for seashells and having a blast. I'm up to nothing. And that was also the thing that they kind of assumed the worst. And I remember my English teacher being the first one to believe in me because he was like, "Did you write this?" And I said, "Yes, I wrote this." And he's like, "This is really deep." I mean, I wrote about one of my good friends who was cutting for an
mm,
assignment. And he was like, "This is profound and deep, and you don't show this in my class, like this person who's writing, you just show bubbly, fun, no worries. And I want you to like dig into that." And so I think he really helped me through that. And as I went to senior year, I kind of was a more well rounded person because of that.
mm. Yeah, it's amazing how like something or someone, that notices something so small within us can actually shift our entire world. And just having
Mhm.
one person believe in you, because I could imagine what it would have felt like, at outdoor school or camp, having all those people just assume that you're up to no good, from association of people that you hang out with, to whatever it was that they preconceived about you as a young student, which I think is totally unfair on
Yeah.
them. It's that's kind of shows where they're at as humans as well, if they're gonna create a reality about young students without coming to them first. I think that's a big thing as humans, is we're constantly assuming things, and that's one thing that we need to like chuck out the door, right? Because you never really know someone's reality, you never really know what's going on. Or so that would have been really hard, having someone point the finger and you just like It's
Mhm.
yeah, I've definitely been in similar situations where you're like, no, it was not me.
Not
But
me.
their preconceived notion of who you are is so strong that it almost doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
So, but
And they don't
yeah,
oh, sorry.
yeah, you're right.
They don't teach us in school how to, advocate for ourselves or
Mm,
really teach us about mental health at all.
no.
And that, they wait till college if you sign up for the course or even if you go.
Mm,
And then it's a lot of the damage has been done. So
absolutely.
I'm a teacher and I am really advocating for teaching about mental health young because it's not stigmatized and it shouldn't be. And
Mhm.
being taught how to properly advocate with yourself without being angry is really important
Yeah.
because it's easy to be defensive and, you know,
Yeah,
confused.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
it's harder to have those tools as a teenager to properly communicate, especially with adults who, we're already kind of up against, trying to get
Absolutely.
away with stuff.
So you have gone on to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. So did you go to college for that?
Yes, I went to Oregon State,
Yeah.
and so I actually am not a traditional teacher at a school.
Yep.
I do homeschooling, and in the past, before COVID, I worked at Boys and Girls Club, so I had 24 first graders all to myself for 5 hours a day.
Wow.
So
That's
we did,
amazing.
yeah, we did a lot of work, and we did a lot of work with mental health, and we call it friendship club, but it's deeper than that.
Mm,
And then I'm actually going on to teach English in Spain. I'm just waiting on my visa.
wow, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yeah.
Have you been to Spain before?
No, I've never traveled Europe, so
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's
mhm.
amazing. You're gonna absolutely love that. What year you gonna be teaching?
So I'm doing an au pair
Okay.
situation.
Yep.
So it's a second and third grade boy,
Yep.
and then I've agreed to teach them English, and then they're gonna teach me Spanish. So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. That's such a beautiful opportunity.
Mhm.
Do you think that like, now that you're a teacher and, you're trying to install some of this information that you've accumulated over your years into these young children's minds, do you think that this sort of passion of yours kind of derives from your high school experience?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, at Boys and Girls Club, the naughty kids we're not supposed to have favorites, but deep down my favorites because I knew it was from something else. I knew they
Mm,
either craved attention or something along those lines. And
yeah,
so it definitely drives from my own experience. And, just I want somebody to believe in these kids, this new generation, like my English teacher did. That totally changed my life, as cheesy as that can sound.
mm,
It did.
yeah, yeah, and it can absolutely, and I think honestly the best you know teachers in life are those that can pull from their own experiences and water young minds, from that place of growth, because that's where it's coming from. Like you've been through, you know, this experience in high school, which was hard, and you saw that as an opportunity to grow. You sought out more, questioned your environment, and you know essentially came out and thrived, and so now you're just watering the minds of young children through that, and I think that's a real big applause to you, because that's an amazing thing to do.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I have to grab my charger.
You're right.
But we're on 6%. Okay. I did want to say one more thing about high school, and that would be slut shaming.
That's a big one.
That needs to stop. Um, and that also plays into assumptions. I
Absolutely.
was honestly very prude and to myself, and people didn't think that about me. I mean,
Mm,
I
mm.
would hear these things and I'd be like, oh, I had sex with that person. Like, cool. I don't remember that. And
Right.
it's just this feeding pool of obsession with sex. And it's like teenagers don't even know how to have sex.
I know. Absolutely. Yeah, let alone being spreading, certain things about that topic. It's hard. It's, as a young female growing up in today's society, growing up, in all of the eras before us, sex has been such a stigmatized subject, and it's something that is like quite um surrounded when it comes to like the female, right? Because with women, if they have sex or if they're even involved in anything that's sexual, it becomes heavily sexualized, and it is so normalized to look down upon that. And this is that's where those sort of things come into play, like slut shaming, spreading rumors about women having sex, you know just like all of the things that have to do with sex that are negatively based, around the female, are to do with the fact purely because we're female. You hear about like men, this is like a really old saying, like men are praised when
Mhm.
they have sex with a lot of women. And then women are completely shut down and shamed if they have sex with a lot of men, as if our sexuality and our sexual pleasure is not of equal status to the men. And that's why a lot of women, young females, experience this sort of shaming in high school, because it's so bad if you have sex and you're a female. And
Mhm.
it's even worse if you haven't and someone is spreading that about you or shaming you because of something that you're wearing or something that you may have said or done. It's literally so stigmatized to the point that it is used as an insult against young women.
And it shouldn't be. And I mean, we're also, our sex education is terrible, for lack of a better word.
I know, I can, yeah, absolutely.
And it's, I mean, the times that I did involve myself in intercourse or explore my sexuality, it was always about the guy. And
Yeah.
always, and I remember thinking, I want to look skinny or pretty, like for this guy, or else like I don't want to even do it. And it's
Uh-huh.
such a bad mindset because it shouldn't be like that. It should be about two people, and women's pleasure matters just as much.
Absolutely, but we're not taught that, right? Like, we're not even taught about female orgasms in high school, and that I feel like that is something that is actually quite relevant, at least when you get to your senior year or year 12, as they call it here, because we're taught about a male's orgasm, right? Because we're taught about the fact that if they come, we get pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the old narrative that women have been fed for a very long time, and it's looked down upon. Female sexual pleasure is so looked down upon that it's such a hush hush subject
Mm-hmm.
in our society, and especially in high school. We don't want to educate women on what sex is, um, but we'll educate us on how to put a condom on a man, right? But
Exactly.
it's so like male gazed. It's honestly it's fucked up. It's so
Yes.
fucked up, and a lot of women are so sexually confused because they're not taught about their sexuality or about sexual practices from a young age, or even about like our periods, for example. That's one thing that people don't mention in high school, and a lot of people think is gross, even though it's like the most natural, beautiful thing that a woman could experience.
Yeah.
Everything about our body is so highly taboo that
Mhm.
it's shamed and looked down upon, and it creates such confusion for a young girl. And so our body is practically handed over to the male through perception, and everything that we do, wear, say, be, becomes for the male gaze, because we're so obsessed with how they see us, because that's what society tells us to do. Society tells us to be this beautiful, pretty, skinny, big tit, no, big butt, whatever, like for the man, because that's what the
Yeah.
guys like. Yeah, absolutely.
I remember how relieved I was when my best friend and I, because you hear in high school all the time, oh, he was so good, or, something like that. And then my best friend and I were talking about sex, and she was like, I just was lying there waiting for it to end, kind of. And and I was like, me too. I mean, is it supposed to be this amazing thing? Because it's not right now. And that's just because the boys didn't know any better. I mean, they were worried about themselves and this, and I just remember being so relieved, like, okay, I'm not broken or something. Like, men aren't taught how to pleasure a woman properly, and they're not taught, you know, that there's more than just jabbing it in and out a million times.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
the anatomy of a female is so overlooked. It's insane, and that just plays a part in, men not knowing about our bodies, or even women not knowing about our bodies. I still know women that don't believe that they can have an orgasm. Like
Mhm.
that's still a thing, and I just recently did a post about orgasms. That wasn't until like the 60s that people were like, oh, women could actually give themselves orgasms. They can have orgasms without a man, or that's actually a thing, and before then it was seen as something, oh, she had to have had an orgasm. If she felt pregnant, it means that she had to, because she released an egg, which means she
Yeah.
had to have felt good. So
Yeah.
not only does it give us confusion about our sexuality, but it also gives men confusion about how to pleasure a woman and what to do. And, a lot of the time, men just think, that they're good, they're great. Like, oh yeah, she moaned, she came. But
Yeah.
really, we've been taught to fake as well.
Yeah.
Like,
We've
we
been taught to lie to them.
make them feel better, to make
Yeah.
them feel better about themselves. Like, our existence has just like been kind of brought up in a way where we make the man feel comfortable and seen and heard and loved. And I'll bleed later. It's all good. How are you? Are you
Yeah.
good? Fine? Yeah, cool. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it is that is what creates confusion for young women.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
It
creates
does.
that culture, that slut shaming culture.
Yeah, it does. And and it's not even for any good reason, because I didn't know what I was doing. Might as well just not had any sex, because no one knew what was going on, and then the
Absolutely.
guy tells the entire football team, and then you're looked down upon,
Mm.
and he's getting a high five. And I just hope that things are better for this next generation in high school. And I think that a lot of is media is dangerous, but it's also a tool. And
Mm.
I think people are being educated, about sex. And you know I saw something you posted. It was a super hairy male asking a female if she could go shave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the new generation seeing images like that one is just going to be so helpful. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
because we didn't get to digest any of that kind of media at that age.
Mm-mm.
So we're just looking at Playboy bunnies and
Kylie Jenner and
Kylie Jenner
and
and porn. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think, I've got a lot of hopes for the generations that, I mean, I've got a lot of hope for this generation. This generation is the change makers. We are actually putting in the work for the younger generations. And like the millennials is where it's at the moment. The millennials are really actioning change in environment, in social justice, in equality, all of these like social, environmental, political issues. We have this really beautiful outlook on, and we just have this insane drive to change it. We
Yeah.
see what's happened in the past, and we see the systems that are put into place, and we see how broken they are and how they do not work, and especially they do not work for us. So this generation is actually going to be the generation that actions this sort of change within the world, or at least within Western civilization.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, the younger generations, they are watching us, and they're just gonna like adopt all of these characteristics and more. They're gonna
Yeah.
be the fighters, you know. Like I like commend you for being a teacher and teaching young children, because that is your gift in giving to, you know, the next generation and the little world changers. Like that's it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, you know.
Yeah.
Like this world is absolutely changing, and we are digesting, you know, so much more juicy goodness for our brains through
Mhm.
media. There's also all the bad shit, but I
Mhm.
feel like we've kind of gotten to this point where we don't pay attention to that anymore. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I feel like, you know, there was like pivotal moment for me, at least, where I kind of went through my social media and just deleted and, you know, unfriended anything that was toxic for my being.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is the same train that a lot of people are on at the moment. They're kind of seeing this stuff. And because we're all kind of vibrating at such a really high level, like our frequency is just high, and all that really low stuff on social media and the mass media just does not resonate with us anymore. And
Yeah.
so we're creating content that is good for the soul. We're speaking our minds. We're, you know, deleting that shit out of our life, and we're, you know, trying to fight to make a change for the generations that are coming after us.
Yeah. I remember like when it was a secret that brands paid influencers to promote their products. Do you remember that time where you just kind of believed that they were using that stuff and showing us for, and it didn't say paid promotion. It's kind of a secret. It was
Mhm.
also a secret, the which, you know, if you want to get surgery and alter anything about your body, go for it. But it was more of a secret, that Los Angeles lifestyle, that they all just look like this, and face tuning, that was kind of a secret. You know, they just look like that.
Yeah.
Now it's so out in the open, like this is a paid sponsorship, this is a face filter, and we're just so aware of that. I think everyone is, men and women are,
Mhm.
which I think is great because it kind of brought us back to reality. I'm seeing more natural faces, more people being their true selves, you know, not every photo that I'm seeing recently is like picture perfect. People are also, I've noticed people are showing more of their actual lives. So maybe a selfie or two, and then, you know, their hike and their breakfast and simple things. And
Mm,
I think it's refreshing.
it is. It's super refreshing. Yeah, because I can remember being a young female and, you know, looking up to all of these people that I thought, in my perception, were perfect. And it just
Mhm.
gave me such a warped like view on how I should be. And
Mhm.
it wasn't out in the open. It was hush hush. It was like, did she Photoshop that? Or you would zoom in to see people's photos to see if the wall was bent, just because you wanted to prove to yourself that, you know, there's no way that they're that perfect. Like, how the fuck can they be that way? And that in itself creates mental illness, and that in itself creates, a false sense of self and identity. And, we're striving to be something that is near impossible because we don't know any better. We didn't know that that was fake. We didn't know that that was plastic surgery. Or, I remember I was obsessed with Kylie Jenner for a while. Like, just loved her. And
Yeah.
I remember having this conversation with my girlfriends in high school, and they were trying to tell me that she had surgery or whatever. And I was like, no, she's not. She was just like that. Like, I know it. Like, I read it somewhere. She's got those boobs are real. That waist is real. Like, and they're like, that's definitely surgery. I'm like, no, she's perfect.
Oh, yeah, that was me too. And I'll even catch myself still sometimes. You know those story filters, and then in the corner it says like Princess Pixie Dust, and it alters. Do you ever like click it and try it and
Yeah.
see how much it changed them?
Yeah.
You're like, wait, why do I care?
I know.
But we
But
do care.
we do. It's ingrained in us because it's what we grew up with. It's a part of our conditioning, but
Mhm.
we're putting in the work to decondition, uncondition ourselves at
Yeah.
the moment. I feel like, a lot of that stuff, whether we view it as trauma or not, was quite traumatic to
Yeah.
endure at a young age and like absorb. So, yeah, of course we still care. I know that there is a lot inside of me that sometimes still looks in the mirror and isn't happy with her image, but I'm building the tools and the skill sets in order to switch that more quickly instead of let it take me down and drive me into a spiral.
Mhm.
And I think that's the sort of work that we're doing right now as a collective. We're, you know, just shedding these layers of what society has fed us, like these old narratives, and we're creating new ones and new stories and new ways to deal with these things. And, and then like people that are posting their real selves on there, like that's their way, you know, of aiding to the collective's tools and skills. And, even for them, like they admit that they don't have great days every day. We can't
Yeah.
love ourselves every day. It just doesn't
Mhm.
work like that.
Mhm.
Especially when we grew up in a world full of comparison.
Yeah. And even, the crazy magazines before we had access. I mean, thank goodness we were born right at a time where we still had a childhood without screens.
Mm.
But even the magazines, I remember so and so looks huge, and they're literally they just had a baby or something, and it's like the things that were written, and we just kind of didn't even blink at that stuff.
Yeah, we digested it.
We just totally digested it, and now we kind of have to go and undo all of that trauma
Yeah.
and process it, like, kind of all over again,
Mhm.
just to get to a place that is almost even neutral before you can really start loving yourself, you know? At
Absolutely.
least for me, that's what happened because, I mean, I wasn't ever severely insecure about my body or anything, but I did have a lot of trauma about my body image. Like, there's days where I'm like, reel it in, like looking a little chunky.
Mhm.
And I was 14 and my body was changing. I wish I just could go hug myself at that age and be like, you're a queen. You're seriously going through changes.
Absolutely.
Your boobs are growing, you're becoming a woman, like, it's beautiful instead of being upset about it?
Well, we have this whole culture over, um, on fat phobia, like, and it's so ingrained into women specifically to be afraid to be fat or to
Mhm,
feel fat, when fat actually itself isn't even a feeling. It's just something that we've created
mhm,
to oppress marginalized women that have weight,
mhm,
and it's something that we fear, and especially as young girls. And this is the thing that you're talking about, like with those magazines and stuff. It's like they emphasize on someone's weight so much to the point that they create a culture of fear around it.
Mhm.
And that's what we have to do the work to work now in order to fucking break that shit down, because it's our bodies are changing constantly changing, especially as a woman. Our weight will never stop fluctuating. But I think that's the beauty about life. Like our bodies are growing and adapting to our environments to keep us safe,
Mhm.
healthy, you know. It's a phenomenal thing, a body, and yet we're so afraid of it to change.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, men, on the other hand, I mean, I'll just say my dad because it's the first thing that came to my mind. Like, he has had the same size jeans since he married my mom. He just has and eats whatever he wants. And I know not all men are like that. Everyone's different, but they're not going through a cycle or a period where literally one of our organs is weighing more. And we're upset that we're weighing more in that time. It's like, a beautiful thing. It's not, and you're not going to gain 50 pounds in one night from having a burger.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We torture ourselves. Like
Yeah.
women really torture themselves over that sort of stuff. Like, I remember I used to weigh myself like 5 times a day, just to, yeah, when I was in high school.
Yeah.
It was torture because I just wanted to be society's version of perfect, or a man's version of perfect. And I remember feeling so much frustration towards guys, even at a young age. Like, how can't you care? Like, what? Like, you have it so easy. You roll out of bed, you put some clothes on, rough up your hair, and you're good to go. And like, women swoon, but like a girl, like I used to spend 2 hours in the mirror every single day with my makeup, trying to be like Kylie Jenner, trying to be like that woman on social media, and to do it for the guys, really, because like who else was I doing it for? Because in those moments I was not doing it for myself. I hated waking up early to do my makeup. It was treacherous. So yeah, men, they not, and you're right, not all men. There are some men that definitely go through some body image stuff as well. But like mass speaking, like predominantly speaking, it is women, because that's where the emphasis is on. Like the emphasis isn't really on a man's body or his weight, or it is on a woman's body, like her stretch marks, her gut, her, tits, ass, all this, what does she look like in a bikini? This is her with clothes on. Like the thing with Billie Eilish at the moment, like the girl wears baggy clothes because that's what she doesn't want to go through. But as soon as she's seen with a tank top on, media fucking just grabs that and attacks her. And it is so appalling to see that humans can be treating other humans like that and installing that sort of fear around their identity, something that should be praised and loved and nurtured. Yeah,
And they're not comparing Brad Pitt's body to Adam Sandler's body,
no,
saying one is better. Like, society's valuing Adam Sandler because he's a funny actor and like a household name, and then Brad Pitt, everyone's like he's so hot, but they're never pinned against each other.
mhm.
One is better than the other. But, you know, the Kardashians, they're the emphasis was always on, Chloe's weight. Kim,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the sisters.
Chloe was
And
the ugly sister.
yeah, and it's just not fair. It just doesn't happen as much to men. I'm sure it does. I know it does, but
Mm,
they're not, their value isn't on their bodies like ours
yeah,
was and is,
it
but
is.
hopefully that's changing.
It's like it's very progressive. I can really see where the change is happening, and like we are very progressive as a collective at the moment. But it doesn't take away the, underlying foundations of like that patriarchal system that was put in place to oppress women. And that means oppression in all facets of life, right? So, our looks, our sexuality, what we say, do, wear, everything has been put emphasis and, direction toward the woman in order to oppress her. Because when a woman's oppressed and not in her full power, it's very easy for men to live the lifestyle that they live, to be in power and to control. And, you know, a lot of men don't necessarily realize that that's the case, but life has been set up for them to be easy, right? Like and they do. And when you're in that sort of privilege, you don't actually recognize that privilege, and you don't notice that privilege has been given to you, because it's something you've had since birth, and it's something that you've grown up with, and it's just there all the time. So you don't notice it. But when you're outside of that privilege and you can kind of take a look, you can see the advantages that you've been given in life. And so as women, like, we can clearly see the advantages that men have been given, especially a white cisgender male, right?
Yeah.
Like, the privilege that they have is like the utmost privilege. And like, for women, it's time now. Like, we are really seeing this for what it is, and instead of shutting up and being quiet like we've been told to do, we are speaking up, right? And like, this is why I've created this, is because like, it is time to speak up. It is time to share a story. It's time to be heard, and it's like time to be seen in our power. Because when a woman is in her power, that is when magic happens, and that is when the world can be balanced, and that is when war stops. And like, and truly in her power, in her like feminine, balanced, masculine power. There's women that try to be in their power by diverting to the men's tactics. Like, who recently ran for president, who was up against Trump? Who was that lady?
Oh, Kamala Harris?
No, Hillary Clinton.
No, Hillary?
Ages ago.
Oh, ages ago, Hillary Clinton, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
Okay.
there's this big thing. Yeah, I'm pretty bad with like American politics.
Yeah.
But there's this big thing where because I used to like argue, women, we are the peacemakers. We don't wage war. And someone brought up with me the other month ago or something like that, well, Hillary Clinton waged war. That's something that she, did. And I was like, well, you know what? Hillary Clinton was living in a man's world. Hillary Clinton was trying to receive a man's position. So what do you think she's going to do? She's going to step into a man's power, and she's going to act from that in order to gain that sort of recognition that she needs, whether it's subconscious or not. That is what was happening. She saw her opportunity to receive power, but it wasn't in an authentic way, coming from like her truest, form of a female. She had to step into this man's shoes in order to be seen. And a lot of the time, that's what women are having to do to get higher positions or higher paid jobs. Is like, they've got to wear that suit and tie, and they've got to be masculine in order to receive any sort of attention from those industries, right? Like, we are asked to strip down our own feminine identity in order to fit into a man's world, instead of actually stepping into our power and becoming a balanced society.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it like that. I used to want to be a welder. Like,
Wow.
I just wanted to be one. I would follow like these accounts called bead porn, where like the welding bead is super straight. I just got
Love that.
I just got all into it. And like, now that I'm thinking about that, it's like I just wanted to, be like, I can do it. I'm a girly girl. Like, that's, I identify with clothes and makeup and this and that, but I was always like, I have this whole side of me that is really true to who I am. I mean, I also love cars. I enjoy sports, and I've never done that for a man. Like, oh, I'm the cool girl who can hang Like, I thoroughly enjoy that stuff, and I think a big part of that might be about what you were saying, like, I'm
Mm,
stepping into the man's world, kind of like, "I'm coming in to your space, hello, I'm here,"
mm.
kinda thing, like, I can be here too.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mhm,
absolutely. And I think, just remaining authentic in those ways to who we are is like the most powerful thing that we can do.
mhm,
I think it's when we step out of our authenticity and try to be something that we're not in a man's world. That's when chaos can derive from. That's where it can happen, and that's why there's this like notion of women being these crazy, insane, emotional beasts is because when we are living in a man's world, we're trying to be seen and we're trying to do these things that aren't authentic to us. And
mhm,
so, of course, all of these suppressed emotions are going to come out in, you know, interesting ways. And that's beside the fact of hormones. Like we have hormones on top of that are a lot more intense than men.
mhm,
Um, but like when someone is trying, it's like kind of like in high school, when you were suppressing that part of you, it was coming out in ways that wasn't so nice or so pretty. And I think that's kind of the same with women as a collective. Is like we've been oppressed for so long that this anger, this emotion, this rage comes out because it's just inside of us, right? And we're trying to fit into this world that wasn't made for us. This world was literally not made for us. Back in
mhm.
like the Roman era, women were viewed no less than a bearer for a man's seed, right? And as soon as she were to give birth, most of the time she would be slaughtered because that's all they needed her for. And if she had a little girl, most of the time that little girl would be killed, like in that era. Like it was very intense. And this world was just set up for men, right? And so we're going to be crazy and emotional and we're going to let this stuff out because it's been inside of us for so long. It's part of our lineage. Like that thing you were talking to me about with water. Like can you explain that again?
Yeah, so kind of how I like to think of life is as a spiritual being. I'm a spiritual person. I don't identify with a certain religion or anything, but I have a lot of spirituality within me and it's always evolving and growing and changing. But one thing that I've always held true is that memories can't die. They're always going to be here. And water holds an abundance of memory inside of it. And all of those memories can be from, when women were being more oppressed than they are today, or from wars, or from all the tragedies and heartache that our world has faced.
Mm,
And human beings, are made up of some crazy high percentage of water.
yeah.
So we actually hold memories, trauma. It could be generational, it could be from something in the outside. We actually hold that within us. And so that's why I think it's so important to speak out and, activate for positive change because we're literally changing the dynamic of the earth. And one day when this is getting really deep, but one day when you and I are not here, our memory will be here
Yeah.
through the body and blood that was literally rushing through our bodies. And however we manifest that, however we explore that, or however we take care of ourselves is literally the legacy we'll leave for others.
Mm,
And so I just think that's a beautiful thing and people can do what they want with it. We have that freedom.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. Well, I
Mhm.
think we're going to leave it on that really beautiful note. I really loved that. I think what I'd like from you, if you've got one piece of advice that you could give to a young woman in high school going through something similar to you, what would it be?
I would just tell her to be fearless in the pursuit of her own happiness. Just be
Mm,
fearless, be kind, it's really hard to be kind in high school when you're hurting and people are mean, but you'll feel so much better. You'll sleep better, you'll be happier. And also just don't be so hard on yourself, you know. You
Mhm.
can fearlessly just find your own happiness, and this is all going to be a memory someday. That's also a part of it. I mean,
Mm,
it's not it's not that serious. You know, the boyfriend who dumped you or the prom date who someone stole, it's all going to be a memory, and just make it a good one. And one more thing
mhm.
is boys are little assholes in high school. So I would say to make as many friends as possible
Absolutely.
because you'll just leave with all these amazing friends instead of a broken heart, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Men
Mhm.
aren't fully developed till their 40s, girls.
Wish they were.
All right. Well, Samantha, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me. And I think that was an amazing conversation. That was all parts deep and sweet and sour. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had fun and I loved getting to know you better.
Yeah, yeah, it's so funny. I remember you as a passing face in the halls, but like that's it, and it's funny how we can make those connections later on in life and through a different lens as well, a completely different lens.